Attraction isn't a choice. Attraction isn't a choice. It's taken me a lot of years of thinking, researching, frustration, trying things, testing things out in the real world, getting to know guys who are really good with women, trying to deconstruct what they do. To summarize the gist of attracting women. And it comes down to these words: attraction isn't a choice. And what I mean by attraction isn't a choice is that if you meet a woman and you interact with her long enough that she forms an impression of you, she has an impression of who you are as a person, and she doesn't feel attraction for you, there's essentially nothing you can do about it. No amount of logic, trying to convince her, pursuing her, buying her things, giving her gifts, compliments, none of it will work. Why? Because it's not a choice. Attraction isn't a choice. The flip side of the coin of attraction isn't a choice is that if you meet a woman and you interact with her long enough that she forms an impression of you and she does feel attraction for you, then there's nothing she can do about it. There's nothing she can do about it. No amount of peer pressure, pressure from her friends, her parents, logical realizations that this isn't the right guy for me, a mismatch with what she thinks she wants. There's nothing she can do about that attraction. And I've seen over my life, as the more powerful that attraction grows inside of a woman, the more irrational things they'll do. The more they'll hang out with guys that are really not good for them. They'll endure abuse, mistreatment, even have their lives destroyed. Now, when I first started seeing this, I thought to myself, there must be some reason for this. It just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Why would a woman allow a guy to just pull her life down? Or why would she endure an abusive relationship or situation? I can remember when I had the epiphany of attraction not being a choice. It was because I started asking myself that question. It happens enough. Why does it happen? What is going on here? And then it hit me. The only way that women could do this consistently over and over and over and over is if they're not choosing it. They're not choosing it. It's not a choice. I'd like you to think about this in terms of a visual, kind of a visual diagram that I'm going to give you to summarize this attraction isn't a choice philosophy. I think that when two people meet, all right, we're going to let these two diagrams here represent two people. I think that when two people meet and they interact with each other, that there's something going on that we might call the surface structure, okay, or the superficial structure. There's their personas communicating, their social selves. And this is the level of communication that you can see on the surface. What's fascinating about this level of communication is that, in my opinion, almost nothing meaningful happens on that level. Almost nothing meaningful happens on that surface social level. That all the meaning is happening on a deeper level. Now, of course, us guys, especially us intelligent, logical guys, who take things for face value, who are empirical, we're trying to solve our problems with women on this level. One of the challenges with this is that usually this is words. This is the thing we're paying attention to, is words. And when we have problems with women, we say, give me some words, give me the things to say to solve this surface level problem. What's that leaving out? Well, it's leaving out body language, voice tone, patterns of communication, almost all of it. What I'm going to suggest to you is that there's another part that we have inside of all of us, a more primal, basic part that we're all born with, all of us. And this part doesn't really care about this surface communication, this persona level stuff. I'm also going to suggest to you that these two parts can actually communicate with each other directly and bypass all this surface communication. And in fact, I'm going to go as far as to say that if you're standing in the presence of a man who knows how to communicate with this part of a woman, this more essential part, and you're watching it happen, and you're just seeing this surface stuff happening, that you might never see this. I'm even going to suggest that you may have been watching this happen all your lives, right in front of you. You've been watching it all your life. You didn't see it. How could that be? Well, that's one of the mysteries we're going to solve in this program. I also believe that these parts, these inner parts that we come wired with, kind of from birth, all of these potential capabilities, I believe that our modern culture, our society, our parents, religion, all kinds of different ideas have kind of recorded over those fundamental mechanisms, pushed them down, pushed them into the background. I also believe that through other kind of processes, like in a lot of cases, men, us guys not having a lot of men around when we were growing up, we didn't learn how to use these talents and flex these muscles. And I believe that you have this part of you. It's in there. I think that there's a part of you that knows everything that it needs to know about how to attract any woman you want. And what we need to do is work together to help you develop that part so that you can naturally attract women. You can use the equipment that you already have to attract the women that you want. I'd like to tell you a little bit about how I got to this point right here. I want to tell you a little of my own story so that you can understand how I went from, essentially not being able to even approach and start conversations with women to getting the kind of success that I always wanted all my life, and then to being here and working with you to help you develop these things. It all kind of started, the crux of it happened when I moved several years ago down to Southern California. I had gotten a new job, and so I moved from where I lived, moved about 1,000 miles, and I had, at that point, everything that I would think a guy would need to be successful with women. I've never perceived myself as being a very attractive guy. I've never been the kind of guy that women walk up to and start conversations with and approach. But I also don't think that I'm incredibly unattractive. Women are repelled by me. I had a nice car. I had a nice apartment. I was making a really good income for my age. And yet I still couldn't meet women. In fact, I could be out at a bar or club or at a coffee shop or walking down the street and see an attractive woman and just get that feeling that woman's, she's probably single. And I just couldn't start a conversation. Even though I logically knew that I had a lot of advantages that other guys didn't have all over the world. I've always been very conscious of the fact that kind of here in Western society in modern times, we have a tremendous amount of advantages. How could I, with all these advantages, not even be able to start a conversation? And one night I was out with my best friend. We were out at a bar, nightclub, watching some live music. And there was a beautiful woman there. And I remember I really wanted to talk to her, but I just couldn't do it. Couldn't start the conversation. there was essentially no risk. I mean, she was just like right there. And I went through that cycle again of frustration, of feeling like there was a wall of plexiglass kind of between me and her. I just couldn't get through it. And I remember we walked outside and we were kind of walking back to our car and we were talking about it. And I said, I am going to figure this out. I'm going to do whatever it takes to figure this out. I have to do this. And that's kind of a point. It's an inflection point or a decisive moment that a lot of us have in our lives that usually, when you have one of those moments, it usually leads to big change. And for me, it did. That started me on a path or a process that continues to this day. And what I did is I went out and I started the best I knew how by reading books. And I started buying popular books on the topic of relationships and dating and that kind of thing. Then that stuff, as I read it, I was thinking to myself, okay, I can tell that this person's trying to communicate something here, but I can't see how this translates into me being able to meet women. It just didn't seem to connect. In fact, most of the things that were written were about relationships and how to have a better relationship, not about how to attract a woman in the first place. And the more I got into that and really studying some of these things, the more I found that a lot of these relationship experts have been divorced 3, 4, 5 times. I guess that makes you an expert in some ways. The real big aha came for me when I did something that I'm also going to recommend that you do, which is I went out and I made friends with several guys who were really good with women. Okay, found guys who were great with women. And I watched what they did. And I had them watch what I was doing. And what was interesting was for several months as I was doing this process, the things that they were doing, that I was watching them do to get women's phone numbers and be effective with women, they didn't really make sense. It was like this process was happening, but I was only watching the surface. I couldn't see the inner connection. And when I would say to them, all right, what should I do in this situation? Or what should somebody do here? In a lot of cases, they looked at me like, duh, like, how could you not know? And sometimes the things that they would say to me to do would be counterintuitive. They wouldn't make sense. And I struggled with it for a long time. There was a part of my logical brain, my logical, empirical, experience-oriented mind, my rational self, that couldn't get past, I know what I should be doing, but I'm just not doing it. Okay, and because I had this thought in my mind like, I know what I should be doing, but I'm not doing it, it kept me closed so I couldn't see what was actually effective and what would actually work. Does that make sense? Follow me there? Sometimes we get our paradigm or our model so solid that us thinking we understand the situation, but we're just not doing it, prevents us from even seeing what we should be doing. Well, through a lot of trial and error and a lot of testing of a lot of things that, I would be embarrassed to even admit in this day and age that I've done, I finally started to see how the pieces fit together. I started to see how the whole thing worked. And eventually I started developing theories and concepts of my own and testing them and refining them and working with other guys who are really great with women to put together some of my ideas. To summarize that little section, as we're learning here, I want you to really think about this part of you. I want you to think about developing this part of you. I want you to let go of maybe some of your preconceived notions about what's socially right or what you should be doing. One of the things that happened for me, by the way, as I was developing a few years back, was I woke up one day, and this was probably in the neighborhood of 3 or 4 years after I started my journey. I woke up one day, and I remember kind of pondering success with women. And I had a realization. I realized that the insecure feeling that I had been walking around with, that needy part of me that when I was single felt like I had to get out there and find a woman or else I might never meet another one again. The part of me that felt desperate was gone. And that I wasn't motivated by that fear anymore. I didn't feel like I had to do something now in order to go find a woman, or else that was going to be the end of my life, and I was going to die alone. And when that shift happened, the way I think back on it is that many things happened in my life. Many things kind of lined up, and that's when I feel like I took the power back in my life. I took the power from something that was outside of me, and in a lot of ways imaginary, and I pulled it back inside of myself. And as a result of that, what was interesting was everything else in my life started working out and lining up. Once I kind of got rid of that core insecurity and that core part that felt inadequate, all the other things started to go right. And I want to recommend to you that you make the commitment to do what it takes to get this part of your life handled, because I believe that once you do, you will prove to yourself that you can do this kind of thing. And that will start a chain reaction that will help you get other things handled that maybe you've wanted to get handled for a long time. A lot of people ask me, they say, "Are you in a relationship?" After they find out what I do. "Are you married?" And sometimes I have a girlfriend, and sometimes I don't. And through that, I was, after that happened, a lot of times I was thinking to myself, why is it that I get to ask this question so much? And then it kind of hit me. In our culture, most people define success, the ability to be successful with women, as having one, right, or being married to one. That's the preconceived notion. And also as part of it, I realized that in order to get a woman, especially a mature, emotionally healthy, interesting, attractive woman who might be good long-term relationship or marriage material, you're probably going to have to do some work. You're probably going to have to work on this for a few minutes. Okay, you're not going to go through a couple hours of training and then walk out and meet the healthiest, most mature and attractive woman in the world who's going to say, "I want to marry you." And I think that the side benefit, but ultimately a direct benefit, of learning how to be more successful with women in dating is that it will prepare you to be a better relationship partner. It'll ultimately set a foundation that when the right woman does appear in your life, you'll know what to do, and you won't screw it up. And then you'll be able to hold on to her and keep her. Just with a quick show of hands, who here is interested in ultimately finding one really great woman, a mature, attractive, emotionally healthy woman, to enjoy a long-term relationship or marriage? Raise your hand. I'm serious. Raise it high. Okay. That's about everybody. I don't think I even see any hands that aren't up. Isn't that interesting? That we're all here to learn about how to be more successful with dating, but we really want long-term relationship? As you know, relationships are failing at a greater and greater rate. Why are they failing at a greater and greater rate? I think that a lot of it has to do with the fact that as men, we have not taken control of our lives and developed ourselves and become more mature, authentic, masculine men who make good relationship partners. And I think another piece of it is we haven't gotten the skills we need to attract women and keep them attracted. I think that if you learn how to become more successful with women in dating, that will naturally lead to a lot more success with women and a relationship. Now, when I started from the ground up, okay, or I used what you might call inductive learning, which is the way we teach our children essentially in schools for the most part. It's the long, hard, slow way to learn things. Because I didn't have, really good mentors around me at the beginning, I just went and did what came natural. I wanted to go learn the tricks. I thought that was what would help me. And so I went out seeking techniques in order to learn how to meet women. And by learning the techniques and then saying, okay, I've learned some techniques, but they're not quite getting me where I want to go. Let me learn some more. And then seeing the commonalities inside of the different techniques and the things that worked. And then building models and seeing, well, these three different things work. Well, maybe I could make a generalization here that this type of thing works. And by making more of these generalizations at higher levels, I eventually got to things like attraction isn't a choice. What I'd like to do with you is try to save you a few of those extra years that I put in and use a different process called deductive learning. And in deductive learning, we're going to start with the higher levels, the more theoretical or abstract, the principles, the foundations. And from those, we are going to move down toward the techniques or toward the tactical. And in light or in a backdrop of theory and good conceptual models, the techniques will make a lot more sense. And as one of my mentors used to say, if you understand theory, you can develop your own infinite number of methodologies and techniques. One of the things that's going to happen as we're talking about theory is I'm going to challenge your model of the world. I'm going to challenge your model of your self-image. I'm going to challenge you in a lot of ways. I'm going to get right down to the core of who you are, and I'm going to mess with it a little bit. And if you haven't done a lot of self-development, this might be a little strange for you. Might get on your nerves. And what I'm going to ask you to do is notice when you'd rather tune out. You might just make a little note to yourself right now. Notice when I'd rather tune out. Notice when I feel compelled to just tune out and not listen. And why is that an important thing to notice? Because when you feel compelled to tune out, that's usually your conscious or unconscious mind saying, that's the thing I really should be paying attention to, but it's too painful. I don't want to see that right now. So let me just divert you so you can say, well, I guess I didn't hear that part. Notice when you want to tune out. Another thing I'm going to ask you to do for the next few days here is to be authentic. Be who you really are, whatever that means to you. Be a little more authentic than you've been in the past. One of the things I'll talk about later is, guys say to me, well, I don't want to learn this stuff because that's manipulation. I don't want to manipulate women. I don't want to learn pickup lines and techniques because I want to be myself and have women like me for who I am. And after, looking at this for a while and looking at the men that were saying that, and of course thinking of myself, I had the epiphany that these guys that were saying that usually manipulated women more than anyone. They were just doing it unconsciously. I say, well, have you ever given a woman a compliment even though you didn't really mean it? You just wanted something? You ever bought a woman dinner? Given her flowers? Oh, yeah, of course. But I'm not manipulating women. That's who I really am. I'm a generous person. You ever buy your best friend flowers? Well, So, what does being authentic mean to you? You've spent a lot of years creating this shell, this social persona. A lot of us are carrying these burned out hulks, pieces of our shell from childhood. We're still playing the games we were playing when we were kids, but we're playing it in the adult world, and now we're being sophisticated about it. We're walking around trying to manipulate people subtly, and we're acting like little tyrants inside. Let that stuff go for a couple of days as you're working through this program. Just be authentic. Be who you really are. whatever it means. If something comes up for you, just say it. Admit it. Even if it seems a little bit weird. Even if it seems like it makes you weak. Because this learning course is a safe environment. Okay, you need to get a little pit stop here. Be in a safe environment where you can be who you really are. Let's try that on for a little while. All right, let's talk about what's going to actually be contained inside this program. Like I mentioned in the beginning, we're going to start with a lot of theory. I'm going to teach you some of my conceptual models, some of my ideas around, how we're wired. We're going to talk about DNA. We're going to talk about animal behavior. We're going to talk about human behavior. We're going to talk about your beliefs and how they're holding you back and how to change them. Next, I'm going to teach you a whole bunch of techniques. Okay, rapid fire. In fact, you're going to learn so many techniques in this program that you're not going to be able to hold them all in your mind at the same time. You're going to learn so many techniques that you're probably going to wish you didn't learn that many. But because I know you think you want a lot, I'm going to deliver. And finally, you're going to hear from a bunch of guest speakers that I'm going to have. And I have assembled an incredible roster of guest speakers. You're going to learn from dating experts. You're going to learn from guys who are some of the best I've ever seen in my life, in the world. You're going to learn from semi-famous kind of published authors, some of my favorite writers in the world. And they're going to give you their experience, and they're going to give you their own take. And what I'd like you to notice as we're going through this program is that some of the material you're going to get is going to conflict with itself. Not everything I tell you and everything other people tell you is going to perfectly line up. And some people say, they raise their hand, hey, what your guest speakers just said, that kind of goes against what you said. And I say, that's right. And I'm glad they said it. Why? Because that challenges you to think for yourself. The last thing that I want is for you to go out and start talking like me and trying to think just like me and pretend to be me. And by putting on a mask of me, you then have self-confidence. Because that's not going to really help you. I want you to think for yourself. I want you to treat this program like a smorgasbord. We're going to lay everything out. I'm going to introduce you to all of it. Try it. Okay, try it. And then choose the things that work for you. Create your own unique formula. I heard recently, and I have no idea what kind of validity this has, but that this was a good friend that told me he read an article on this that said that children need to acquire tastes for just about everything. And that if you don't eat something when you're a kid, if you don't try it, I think it's something like a dozen times, one time, another, you won't acquire a taste for it. And that a lot of us, when we were growing up, we didn't have parents that made us try everything over and over and over and insist, and so now we don't like a lot of foods. I'd like you to apply that mindset to what you're going to learn here. I'm going to give you a whole bunch of different stuff. Some of it, you're going to just go, I just can't even get that away from me. I want you to try it anyway. And in fact, I want you to try it a bunch of times. Try it 10 times. If you don't like it, that means you really need to try it. I found in my life that a lot of times the things that made the least amount of sense to me, that were the most counterintuitive, the things I resisted the most, turned out to be the most powerful on the back end. They helped me the most in my life. So I want you to just try it. What I really think you're going to find is that there's an aha moment. That once you get to the point where you can see how things work, where you can see this happening right in front of you, when you can affect the attraction level of a woman toward you, when that moment happens, you get it. You have an aha. The power kind of starts to emanate from the inside. And I want you to work until you have that moment happen. The reality of the situation is that I can't help everyone, and I'm not interested in helping everyone. I'm not interested in being thought of as a messiah or a guru or any of that stuff. What I want to do is help you help yourself. And when you're done, I enjoy the gratitude as much as anyone else. When people come to me and say, wow, you've really, helped me change my life. I like that. But I want it to be you that does it. I don't want it to be me. And I want you to commit to yourself that you're going to work for as long as it takes to get to that point where you get it. Some people it takes longer than others. For me, it took a long time. Okay, one of the things that I've learned in life is that commitment is important for development. Commitment is important for development. And the more of this helping guys become more successful with women in dating that I do, the more you hear me encouraging them to make a personal commitment. And I want to encourage you right now to make a personal commitment to yourself. I want you to make a 90-day commitment. 3 months. 90 days in a row. And what I'd like you to do is make a commitment to yourself that you will use what you're learning here for an hour a day. Just 1 hour every day for 90 days in a row. Now, part of that might be reviewing the materials, doing some of the mental exercises that we're going to work on, working on your limiting beliefs, what have you, some of the inner work. And some of it might be getting out into the real world and actually using what you're learning. If you take the materials you're going to learn and you implement for an hour every day for 90 days, I absolutely guarantee that you will see progress. Okay, you will see verifiable progress in your own life. So here's what I'd like you to do. And you can't do this too often. Close your eyes for a second. Just close your eyes. Make a 90-day commitment to yourself. Say, I will do this every day, an hour a day. I'll implement for 90 days. Okay, good. Open your eyes. So what's so important about the 90 days and the personal commitment? What I know is if we just went through that little exercise and you didn't do it, you're like, yeah. Let me just fast forward and get to the pickup lines. This probably isn't going to work for you. You're probably not going to get much out of this program. If you just thought, I can skip that part because I'm cooler than these. Yeah. So what's the benefit to you if you work on this every day for 90 days? What will the benefit be to you personally? What could you get out of this? Maybe make yourself a little note. 90 days from today, how could your life be different if you work on this for an hour every day? What could be different for you? What could you have in your life that you don't have? What could you have in your life that you've never had in 90 days? And now, look even past 90 days into kind of more the future landscape of your life. And think about working for an hour a day for 90 days, getting that success, getting those things that you have never had before, and how they will go on to affect the rest of your life. You must actually do what you're learning. Okay, you have to do it. You have to use it. It's amazing. If you come up and talk to me kind of at the end of one of these programs and you're standing around, you're going to see it. You'll see it live. A guy who says, yeah, I got this program of yours, and I've been reading your newsletter for a year, and I read your book and whatever, and I just got your body language program. And can you help me with this problem that I have? And I look at the person and I go, what, did you just say you just went through my body language program and you're still having challenges? Yeah. Sometimes I whack people, and I go, dude, what are you talking about? You're not using what you learned in the program, and now you're asking me for more help. You need to use what you're learning, okay? Don't put us both through the torture of many hours of this and then not use it, and then come back and say, I'm still having this problem. I swear, if you come up to me and go, I got your body language program, I'm still having problems, can you help me out? Okay, it's critical that you do what you're learning. Apply it to your thinking, to your behavior, to everything. Over the years of trying to learn how to be more successful with women, I kind of keep journals. You see me walking around with journals all the time. Got my latest one right here. I'm always writing insights down. I recommend that you do the same. When things come up for me, I write them down. I make lists and I think them through. And because I've interacted with a lot of guys in my own search for knowledge on how to be more successful, and I kind of have analyzed my own thinking, I've realized that we men, we have a lot of things in common, our frustrations. So I want to go over a few of these things, and I want to ask you, can you identify with some of these issues? Because I've tried to condense it down. And I think that if we can come to a common understanding of what it is we're trying to solve, maybe get a little more specific about it, that we can become more effective. All right, how about this one? I get nervous when I think it might be time to ask a woman for her number or ask her out or kiss her. And I feel like I could lose my chances of having anything happen if I screw this up. I don't want to make a mistake. I'm insecure because I'm not tall, rich, famous, or handsome, and I can't see why a really attractive woman would be interested in me when she has access to those types of guys. I become immobilized and nervous when I see a woman I'd like to meet, and by the time I figure out a good thing to say, she's gone. I become self-conscious and stilted when I'm around a woman or women that I think are attractive. I feel like women have all the power and choice, and I have little or none. I don't get women or their interests in fashion and style, and I don't know where to even begin. I have no idea how to tell if a woman likes me or is interested in me. I want to know everything there is to know before I take the risk of approaching women I don't know. I want to learn everything before I even do step one. I get self-conscious about my drives and desires, and I feel like I'd be embarrassed if a woman ever found out what I'm really thinking. I don't want to admit that I feel insecure about this area to anyone, and I don't like having to ask for help or talking about it. I wish I could do this myself. I don't know what to do when a woman gets dramatic or upset. She gets emotional, but it freaks me out. I would really love to meet an exceptional woman who doesn't have any hang-ups, so we can have great sex, have a great connection. But it just doesn't seem like a woman like that is out there. Or if she is, that she'd be interested in me. I've been to the point where I just want to give up because this seems like it will never work. I'll never be successful with women, and I should just accept it. I should deal with it. I don't know how to handle high-class, sophisticated women. Those really attractive women that I've always dreamed about being with. I'd like to date younger or more attractive women, but I have no idea how to go about it. Raise your hand if you can identify with one of those statements. Okay? Keep your hand up if you can identify at some level with all of them. Okay? Probably a good 70% of the people in this room can identify at some level with all of them. We have a lot of stuff in common. That's my objective here, is to give you the tools to overcome all of those things. Okay, so back to attraction isn't a choice. Okay, so attraction isn't a process that happens by choice. Okay, a woman doesn't meet a guy that she finds attractive and go, wow, you know, this guy looks like his offspring would create, very sexy, males that would attract other females and be able to impregnate them and thus pass my genes on. I think maybe I should feel attraction for him. Attraction isn't a choice. What is attraction? Well, after really analyzing it, I realized that attraction isn't a logical process at all. It's more of an emotional and physical process that's a response, and it's something that's triggered. It's not something that's kind of arrived at over time. It's triggered. Attraction actually does have a logic, quote unquote, all its own, complete with techniques you can learn in order to increase it. When a woman feels attraction to a man, she'll do things that seem to be completely illogical, irrational, and even against her best interests in order to be with the man who's the object of her desires. Here's a little phrase that I'd like you to think about, contemplate, write down, review a lot. You might want to put this one on a little sticky note and put it on your computer monitor or something. Attraction is nature's way of taking over our minds and bodies for just long enough to make sure that we mate with someone with good genes. It's nature's way of taking over our minds and bodies and emotions just long enough. You remember that part, just long enough to make sure that we mate with someone with good genes. If you look at everything that happens that seems illogical in the dating world through that lens, I think it will all start to make a lot more sense. And you'll begin to see this logic that I'm talking about. It will start to take shape. You might even think of it as women unconsciously asking themselves always, will this man produce offspring that will survive and attract mates? I'd like to suggest that if you can communicate that you will produce what the evolutionary psychologists and biologists call sexy sons and sexy daughters that will survive and be able to mate successfully, that a woman will feel attraction for you. And that the way to give her that impression is sometimes very counterintuitive. We'll work on that in this program. Power, dominance, wealth, arrogance, humor, intelligence are all what are called fitness indicators that say, on a subtle level, I have great genes and my offspring will have them too. And in one way or another, guys who are naturally successful with women, the naturals out there, you hear me call them, they are able to communicate this powerful message that speaks to a woman's unconscious and her hardwired motivations that say, if we mate, our offspring are going to be very sexy. Okay, so let me give you another diagram here to think about. Remember, what I'm giving you are conceptual models. They're not reality. Okay, they're abstractions. They're generalizations. They're not perfect. But they're designed to get you to another level that will then get you to another level. So let's say this is point A, and this is point B. And point A is where a woman is getting to that point in her life where she's very fertile and is starting to feel that drive to reproduce. And point B is she has successfully passed her genes on to the next generation. Okay, so her genes have matured, they've survived in this body. Here, they've been passed on to the next one successfully. What's standing between point A and point B? As of right now, women can't make this process happen alone. Although in the future, they very likely will be able to, but that's a whole different problem that we'll deal with in a different program. Well, the thing that's missing is this kind of imaginary facilitator of that process, which is the other half. In our species, we need male and female to procreate. A woman, have you ever met a woman who's having that nesting and reproducing kind of drive happen to her? And you can see that everything she's thinking and everything she's doing is somehow kind of moving toward that. Do you know what I'm talking about here? It's all of her wiring trying to get to this point. Well, inside of her, there is a map for what she needs in order to do that. Okay, our species has successfully reproduced for a long time, since back before it was our species, back before we had language and culture and, high heels and television. So I think that she comes with this kind of map inside of her of what she needs, the missing piece, to get to this, and then to have this have the most chance of success for getting to the next level. And I think that by looking for this invisible thing that's a missing puzzle piece to get her to the future, by kind of really trying to analyze what this is and how that wiring could look inside of her head, and how, very importantly, you can become this piece, I think that will lead you to a lot of realizations. It's interesting, most guys, when they want to learn how to meet women, they go, give me a technique, give me a pickup line, right? I want the pickup lines. Instead of looking at what's really going on and taking a 40,000-foot view. So, kind of write this down, make yourself a little diagram of this, and maybe in the middle here, you might just want to put a big question mark. What goes in here? Let's talk about seduction. Seducing women. When I first started learning about how to kind of meet women, a lot of the things that I studied, a lot of the books I read, programs I went to and so forth, focused on this notion of seduction. And I remember as I read this stuff, or I learned this stuff, or kind of like put it into my brain, I remember feeling this little twinge of, I'm doing something that's maybe not quite right, or I'm learning something that's edgy. It was kind of thrilling, but it was kind of, unsettling at the same time. And after doing that for a while, and then kind of after creating my own identity in the world and figuring out how to be successful with women for myself, I looked back on that and I thought about it. And when I was preparing this program, I went and I looked up seduction in the dictionary. And here's what it said. Seduction. The act of seducing, enticement to wrongdoing. Specifically, the offense of inducing a woman to consent to unlawful sexual intercourse by enticements which overcome her scruples. The wrong or crime of persuading a woman to surrender her chastity. Isn't that interesting that that's the actual definition of seduction? So you can imagine why it has a lot of these connotations, and why when you're learning about it, you're getting those ethical twinges sometimes of what, it's kind of exciting, but is there something wrong here? Seduction implies tricking, being dishonest, and hiding your motives. Seduction also implies, in my opinion, a scarcity mentality. It implies that you lack confidence that women will feel attracted to you, and therefore you must resort to covert maneuvers. Attraction, on the other hand, and working to be able to create attraction in the real way or the authentic way, as we're going to talk about it, is working on yourself and improving yourself to the point where women are magnetically attracted to you and want to be around you. I believe that each of us was born with an innate, pre-wired, instinctive knowledge of exactly how to make women feel attraction. Culture, religion, socially accepted norms, and other mind viruses have programmed us, and we've lost touch with this part of ourselves. Those in power, and many women, would prefer that you forgot this innate ability. It's not in their best interest if you become the master of your own destiny in this area. So I'd like to ask you right now to make a little internal decision. Would you like to pursue the path where you have to learn things that feel like trickery in order to attract women? Or would you like to develop yourself to the point and develop that inner part of yourself where you can make women feel attraction for you? Which direction would you like to go? Here's a little diagram that I put together when I was creating this program. I'm fascinated with the counterintuitive. I love things that shouldn't happen but do. Whenever I see those, I have to work on them. And if you look at this diagram, you'll see some connections. And this is what logically makes sense. This is what it seems should happen. So, for instance, you give a compliment and she feels affection toward you. You notice a flaw that she has and she's repelled. Or you act unselfishly and she likes being around you. You act selfishly, she doesn't like being around you. Right? These make sense. These are logical. You act humble, she feels attracted to you. You act arrogant, she feels repelled by you. You buy her dinners and gifts, she appreciates your originality. You have her cook, and she finds you unoriginal. You call her often, she calls you often. You don't call often, she doesn't call you often. You express your feelings to her, she expresses her feelings to you. You show no emotion, and she needs space. You ask her to decide on things, and she appreciates it. You always decide for her. She thinks of you as insecure, controlling. You accept her drama and deal with it, and she respects you for it. You never tolerate her drama, and she doesn't respect you. This all makes sense, right? It's all logical. This is the way the world really works. In fact, if it doesn't seem to be working that way, it's probably something you're doing wrong, right? I mean, it only makes sense, so you should try harder. I mean, if you want her to call you, you should call her more often, right? Well, what I noticed, the pattern that I started to see coming together, was that these were often reversed. That the cause and effect relationships were often backwards. So what I would see happening is you give compliments and she's repelled. You notice a flaw and she feels affection toward you, attraction toward you. You act unselfishly toward her. She doesn't like being around you. Huh? You act selfishly. She likes being around you, wants more of your attention. You act humble toward her, and she feels repelled. You act arrogant. She feels attracted. So what I'm suggesting here is whatever your model is of how things should work, that you need to open your mind to the idea that it could be completely different. In fact, it could be the opposite in a lot of cases. And that what you're doing is not only preventing you from having success, but it's pushing you further from it. It's actually counterproductive. Now, our topic here is women in dating. And like I talked about earlier, you know, a lot of guys are unsuccessful at relationships, I believe, because they're unsuccessful at attracting women in the first place. And what we're going to talk about is the dating world, that little space from, you know, essentially right before you meet that woman to maybe the first few dates or so, in that range. I really believe that things are different in the beginning of a relationship when you first start interacting with a woman. And a very interesting pattern that I've seen happen a lot is when guys who were formerly not good at attracting women learn the skill of attracting women, they go on and they meet a great woman who's really amazing. And what you'll find is that if you meet a great woman who's mature and then she finds out that you went through this process or she learns that this is something that you study, a great woman will usually think it's cool and really appreciate it. She'll want to know all about it. that ultimately, after you get into a long-term relationship with that woman, and maybe she's talking about it with her friends or your friends or whatever, she'll say something like, it's cute that he learned all that stuff, and it's neat that he developed himself, but I really like him for who he is. I like the real him. And it's ironic because most guys want a woman to like us for who we really are, but we just make it so difficult for her to ever find out who we really are because we act like such wuss-bag jackasses that they run screaming. All right, so if you act like you're trying to get a woman to be in a relationship with you when you first get to know her, this will trigger her play hard to get mechanism. If you express relationship interest right up front, very quickly, you'll find that most women will pull way back and go right into play hard to get mode. You can do things when you're in a relationship that you shouldn't do when you first meet a woman. Okay? Examples are sharing feelings, giving gifts, being vulnerable. A relationship is a wonderful goal. It truly is. It's a good, healthy, mature goal. But it's not our topic here. We're going to focus on the dating in order to lead to the point where you could have a great relationship if you want. I've got a friend who she was just telling me that she went on 3 dates with 3 different guys in a month recently, and all 3 of them seemed like cool, hip, attractive guys that really had it together, and all 3 of them, at some point on the date, guys that didn't even know each other, all 3 of them started crying on the first date. One of them said, I just feel so connected to you. A couple of us were talking about it. Is Andrew here? The little double bite. And then he said, you know what, I just want to cuddle with you. Can we just cuddle tonight? And you know what's great is she said, I really liked these guys. All 3 of them, I was like, yeah, this is a really interesting, attractive guy, This could be a really fun time. What did they do? They just shot themselves in the foot with an Uzi. Don't do that. Don't do relationship stuff when you first meet a woman. Wait. Okay. Do you get it? Do you get it? I really believe that you kind of either get what's going on between a man and a woman or you don't. Okay, you get that inner connection thing or you don't. And if you think that the way to make a woman feel attracted to you is to worship her, become nervous in her presence, and be your average, humble wussy, then you just don't get it. Okay, it's like a joke. You either get it or you don't. If you realize that women feel attraction for specific reasons, and you know what those reasons are and how to create them, then you do get it. Once you get it, then you have to actually work on your execution, you have to practice your skills, improve your real-world abilities until you experience success. If you don't get it to begin with, then there's almost nothing you can do. You'll beat your head against the wall forever. No magic techniques will work consistently if you don't get it, and any technique will work if you do get it. Write that down. Any technique will work if I do get it. In fact, some of my friends and I, we actually try to do things that won't work. And have seen all of the things that you would intuitively say that nobody could make that work. And then one of us will go make it work. All right, let's talk about the things you can't see, but are there. I'd like to talk about unspoken languages and the elusive obvious. This guy named Moshe Feldenkrais that wrote a book called The Elusive Obvious. And when I heard those words, I said, wow, that's attractive to me. That's very interesting, the elusive obvious. It suggests that it's right there, but we can't see it for some reason. And I want to ask you a question. If there was a secret language being used all around you that had been being used your whole life, but you didn't know it existed, how could I convince you that it was real? If there was a secret language being spoken all around you your whole life, it had been going on your whole life, right in front of you, how could I even convince you that it was real? Because anything I pointed out, if I said, see, that person's doing it, you'd go, what are you talking about? No, they're not. So part of my challenge is to convince you of a secret language that you may not be consciously aware of. Women are something like 10 times better than men at reading subtle body language cues and communicating using body language and other kind of subtle patterns of communication. 10 times better. Women instantly know if they're dealing with a man who gets it, is sexually aware, and who understands these subtle dynamics that we're talking about. If you don't start speaking the code language that I'm describing immediately with a woman, as soon as you meet her, right at the beginning, in fact, in a lot of cases, before you even start the interaction, then she doesn't switch to that communication channel, the door slams shut, and you never get it. It doesn't happen. Because you're unaware of it, because you can't see it, you don't start communicating with it, and what happens? She doesn't start transmitting on that signal either. So there's a concept that's referred to by women usually as sexual tension or chemistry. And I think that by seeking to understand sexual tension and chemistry and to know what that feels like and looks like and to be able to spark it even for just a second is what allows you to get that foothold into this idea and allows you to start seeing the elusive obvious. Okay, so sexual tension or chemistry. I believe these things are things that you can create, and I believe they're things you can trigger. And I think that once you see them, again, they'll kind of open a little portal in reality. You'll be able to start looking through and say, I can see that other language. So, when you're looking for the elusive obvious, where do you start? Well, to begin with, you need to know to look for it. You actually need to turn your mind on and go, hey, I'm going to start looking for it. I'm going to start watching. You need to believe it exists. You need to actually believe that it exists. If you don't believe it's there right now, I would ask that you find some guys that are really good with women, show them that previous part of the program so they can kind of see what you're talking about, and then say, does that really exist? And they'll verify it for you. You might even be able to get them to show you. Say, you know what, let's go out to the coffee shop and show me with a couple of women so I can see this happen. So you can get the belief. Next, you need to look for patterns. Humans are pattern recognizing machines. We're always looking for patterns to figure out the meaning of things. What's that really mean? Well, in this case, you need to use that incredible mechanism you have between your ears to look for patterns. Patterns. You need to learn what others who have looked before you have found. We're not the first ones on this path or this journey. Others have gone before us for a long time and have made it their business to figure out how to more effectively go down that path. Men, we like to be independent and be like, oh no, I'm going to figure this out for myself. I don't need other guys. I don't need to do what they did. I'm going to find my own way. I respect you if that's what you want to do, if you have that kind of rugged individualism. I also think you're going to waste a lot of time. So learn what others have learned, others who have gone before you. You need to look for the profound in the simple. You need to look for the profound in the simple. You know, finding the world in a single grain of sand. Sting, the recording artist, is great at that, finding the profound in the simple, and then taking it and making hit music and having it connect with so many people. Simple stuff, but it's profound. And then you need to ask experts who are probably unaware that their insight is anything special, and then get their beliefs, model, perspective, paradigm, etc. You need to find out what they believe, how they look at the world, how they see things. Ask questions like, hey, when it comes to success with women, how do you think about it? You'll find a lot of guys that are really successful, they go, oh, it's just a fun little game. You go, it's a fun little game. Wow, isn't that interesting? Or they'll say, it's a challenge I really enjoy. And just that shift in perspective of, wow, this could be a fun game. Learning could be an interesting challenge to enjoy. Change your whole experience. All right, let's talk about the learning process. The learning process. And I want to talk about the deep learning process, not just the superficial learning process. And this is a diagram that I got from someone that I used to work with. If you look at this, you'll see a lot contained in here. That there are essentially 7 steps that we go through when learning any really important lesson. And I think the more that you can become aware of this process, the more you can speed it up and save yourself a lot of pain, a lot of frustration. So we always start out at idealistic. We're idealistic. We have the way we'd like the world to be, or the way we see things, or the way we want women to be, for instance, or the way we want our relationship to be. And something then happens to open our eyes or violate our idealism, and then we get frustrated. Okay? All of us at some level on the inside have a part of us that's immature. So we act spoiled, we get frustrated. And then frustration, okay, when we don't get what we want even more, it turns into defiance, and we become defiant. Some people even get to the point where they become righteously indignant. Have you ever seen someone that was frustrated and defiant, and as you were trying to deal with them, they turned righteous? Where not only were they emotionally out of control and frustrated, but they were more right than you, and they were better than you because of it? All right. Well, after you keep doing that for anywhere between, seconds and your whole life, you usually hit the kind of that critical moment or that inflection point, that decisive moment where you become resigned. Okay, and this is the critical point. This is the point where everything changes, where there's a complete paradigm shift. And when you're resigned, you can really either accept this or you can try to push it off. You can try to prevent it or you can accept it. You can invite it. You can either surrender and say, okay, I was doing my little idealistic, frustrated, defiant thing again. I surrender. I surrender to my learning process that I'm going through. Or you can turn passive-aggressive when you get resigned. And I've known a lot of people in my life that go into passive-aggressive. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they maybe even try to pretend like they're trying to make progress. But they're passive-aggressive. Nothing you say or do can help them because their inaction is they're getting back at you. They're cutting off their nose to spite their face. Well, if you surrender and you successfully get to resigned and you move to the next phase, this is when awareness happens. Once you've gone through these first steps, all of a sudden you start to see new possibilities. You become aware that there's a whole range of things that you never considered before that you could do. Then you start to get excited, and you pick one, and you become decisive, and you say, you know what, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go this direction. And then you get committed to that, and your commitment takes you to the next level. An interesting observation that I had when I've spent a lot of time studying this diagram and thinking about it is that when you get to the other side of the diagram and you become committed to something, when you're the most committed to something, you're the most committed. Think about a time in your life where you were the most committed to something. Maybe like a New Year's resolution where you're like, okay, this is the year for... What were you also when you were the most committed? You were the most idealistic. All right, so the spiral starts itself again. And this is the evolving and learning process of life. As a little personal trick I'll give you here, what I try to do is I try to stick between awareness and decisiveness. I try to stay there in my life. Stay aware of possibilities, keep generating possibilities, deciding on one, trying it out, moving forward with it, and then maintaining my awareness. Not getting too stuck on an idea or too idealistic. So you get too into something, that's when you'll kind of feel frustrated. You'll see this process happen over the course of this program. Okay, you'll meet people, you'll probably go through it. Some level, you'll be idealistic. I am going to come to this program, I'm going to learn the world's greatest pickup line from the world's greatest dating guru. I'm going to go back home, and I'm going to walk into this hot club, and I'm going to see that hot babe that I've seen for years now that I've never been able to approach, and I'm just going to roll up to her. I'm going to drop it like it is hot. I'm going to walk away with the digits, and I'm going to be a star. And then we're going to start talking about you working on yourself and your stuff and how it's all you that's the problem, not her. And you're going to become frustrated. You're going to be like, oh, just give me the damn pickup line. If I had the line, I'd get the chick, and I wouldn't have to do any of this stuff. And then defiant. When are we going to talk about pickup lines? Just where is the section even? What day are pickup lines on? And then maybe if you do a little bit of inner work and you start playing with some of these exercises, you're going to realize, wow, I've been preventing this success my whole life. It really is me. You're going to start to have awareness about how you can take control. You're going to become decisive about an action or a step to take. You're going to get committed to it, and you're going to get excited, and that's when you're going to start to see results. Okay, so it's important that you let go of your ideals. Okay, I think it's important to let go of ideals as a proactive measure in life. So I think we all walk around them with these ideals that we have. So here's an ideal, for instance. I want to be myself, and I want her to like me for me. Here's another one. I want a relationship where we can be equals. Here's another one. I want to tell her that she's special and that I have feelings for her within 30 seconds of meeting her. These are ideals. We all have these things in our heads. And a lot of times we use them to justify why we're not doing anything to get ourselves out of the funk that we're in. And in order to let go of ideals, sometimes you have to look at the real world. You have to look outside of yourself and see what's really going on. So for instance, in this ideal, I want to be myself, I want her to like me for me, there's a lot of junk that kind of like locks it into your mind. Well, by looking out into the real world and realizing that attractive women are approached often, and they must disqualify men fast, and that if you act like you, the way you're acting now, she's going to blow you off instantly, you have this awareness, if I keep my ideal, then I won't get the woman. And what to do about that is go learn and use a few techniques to get past her persona, that surface level. Learn a few techniques to just get past that, so you can get past that game, so that she can eventually like you for you, and you can eventually relax. The next one, I want a relationship where we can be equals. Well, look around in the real world for a couple of seconds, and what you'll see is that women don't feel attraction for men they perceive as equals. And look at most successful relationships that last for a long time. They're not usually equals, regardless of how much of an ideal you have around it. What to do? Learn how to get and keep control, even if it's a bit of an annoyance. I'm not saying to learn how to be a controlling, abusive, insecure jerk. I'm just saying try it out. Try learning how to stay in control of interactions with women. See how that works for you. Next one. I want to tell her that she's special and that I have feelings for her. I know I've only known you for an hour, but I just need to cry a little bit. What's the reality out in the real world? Women have this stuff happening all the time. And when a man early on says, I think you're very special and I have feelings for you, it's like putting on a giant superhero outfit with a cape that has a giant W in the middle of your chest, turning into super wussy. That's the reality. So what can you do in the real world? Learn how to chill out. Lean back. Let her come to you. Save those private feelings that you have for yourself. Enjoy them. Enjoy the process of feeling enamored with a woman. But don't let it out of your mouth for a little while. See how that works for you. Write down your little ideal, the one that's preventing you from having success. It might be beautiful women are all innocent, wonderful people. It might be, I shouldn't have to learn this stuff. It might be, it's wrong for me to learn how to attract women. It's manipulative. What's your ideal? Just kind of get to know it there a little bit, become a little more authentic. All right, let's talk about what men want and how to get it. Now, Freud was interesting. He didn't know what women want. He actually said something to the effect of, after 20 or 30 years of studying psychology, there's one question that I just don't know the answer to, and it's, what do women want? And what's interesting is most men don't know what they want either. That's what I found. We don't know what we want. Now, humans are kind of classified by the behaviorists as mostly monogamous mammals. We prefer to mate with one primary partner, but often have many partners over our lives, and often cheat on their current partner. There have been a lot of interesting books that have been written about this. I believe that most men would like to meet a wonderful woman who's a complement to them, who's sexually satisfying and a joy to be around for a long-term relationship. Even though a lot of guys present an image of wanting to be a quote-unquote player for life, most would actually prefer a wonderful woman and a great relationship. Exceptionally attractive, healthy, intelligent, emotionally stable, interesting women are rare, as are exceptional men. You're probably going to have to meet several women before you run into the one. And it's probably even more than several. One of the keys to learning and mastering the material that you're going to learn is to be ready when one of these women actually shows up in your life. And the way to be ready is to meet and develop your skills with women who aren't that one. That's the road. What I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to decide what you want. We'll take a little practice run at it. It's something that I am going to ask you to do for the rest of your life. I think the more you can do this, the more effective you can become at doing this, the more successful you can become at whatever you want to pursue. When I ask people to decide what they want, friends, guys I'm working with, and so forth. I say, just figure out, tell me what you want. What do you want? I don't care if it's in a minute, 5 years, whatever. Just tell me what you want and when you want to have it by. And then describe it, clarify it. All this stuff usually comes up. It's so weird. It's like, instead of just saying, well, I want to have, this girl that looks like this, she's about this old, makes this amount of money, whatever, and I'd like to have her within this amount of time. They come up with reasons why they don't want to decide what they want. How counterproductive is that? I would like to encourage you to practice the skill of deciding what you want and then clarifying it on an ongoing basis. Deciding what you want and then continually clarifying it and getting more and more clear over time. All right, quick exercise. Deciding what you really want. Many guys have imaginary ideals that aren't what would actually fulfill them. I hate to give you the bad news, but the thing in your mind, that ideal woman or situation or whatever that you think is going to give you that ultimate fulfillment, it's probably not. And if I could just give it to you right now, I would, because the gift would be you realizing that it's not going to fulfill you. It's not going to change everything for you. Sometimes we let society or our social group or others determine our goals for us by way of pressure, influence, or we just plain copy what they want. Things that taste good aren't always good for you, and many different types of women fall into the be careful what you wish for category. In fact, most of the women that guys desire the most really fall into the be careful what you wish for category. So let's do the exercise. Take out a piece of paper real quick. I'd like you to decide what you want. Just practice. What do you want? What do you want for your life? And when do you want it? I want you to put a timeline on it. Something that feels right. And then I'd like you to describe the situation. What will it look like? Describe a little, almost like you're writing a scene for a screenplay. What will the situation look like when you have what you want? I'd like you to visualize it in your mind and just write out real quick, what will that situation look like that you'll have? Just do it, a couple minutes. And just to get some practice as you're doing that, how could you clarify it even more? How could you be even more specific about what you want? A lot of power comes from clarity. And the process of clarification, continuing to become more clear and more specific about what you want, builds its own momentum, creates its own power. Okay, I'd like you to do another exercise right now. I'd like you to identify some of your fears and frustrations, and then I'd like for us to work together to see those in a different light, to do something productive with them, okay? So it's very common for people to become obstacle-minded and to talk themselves into things that aren't true, talk to themselves in ways that make the obstacles bigger. Never use your mind to creatively imagine or figure out why you won't succeed or to put limitations in your way. Okay, don't use this amazing creative apparatus that you have to figure out why it won't work and why it won't work for you and why you'll never succeed. Don't do that. If you're going to